I'd like to call to order the July 18th meeting of the Environmental Matters Committee. And for the record, all the members are present. Let's see. So first of all, we have approval of the minutes.
Move approval of the minutes.
I second approval of the minutes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I guess I should have done agenda change first. Oh, whatever. We'll just deal with it as it comes up.
Yep.
All right. So we have a couple of appointments to deal with. So first of all, appointment of John R. Butler to the Port Ward. John, I don't see him
not
here.
And actually, Will should be here. Mr. Chair, I know John and actually have worked with him on potential harbor line adjustments at Tecumseh, but also he was extensively involved with the hearings before the Port Warden on the South Annapolis Yachting Center, and I certainly could highly recommend him. I like John because he's very low-key, very thoughtful.
Mm-hmm.
And of course he is from my ward, but I certainly would support his nomination.
Alderwoman Terry?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I think if anything rubs off by osmosis from his spouse, I would wholeheartedly support him. But I do know him, and I did attend those Port Warden meetings where he did represent the Newport condominiums, and I highly support his nomination.
All right.
So I move we recommend approval to the council for the appointment of John Butler.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We'll forgive him for not being here.
Yes. And next up is an appointment of
Scott Anders.
Scott Anders to Port Warden. Scott, Mr. Anders here? It doesn't look like it.
So I read his resume, and it looks like he certainly is quite familiar with marina operations, and by extension would presume he would be cognizant of the kinds of issues, because Port Wardens ironically deal with the land side of things, and the Maritime Advisory deals with the water side. So it seems to me like he has a very reasonable background, and we're always grateful when people are willing to volunteer to do all of this work. And Port Wardens is definitely one of the bodies that's had a hard time getting a quorum. So I think I would certainly recommend that we recommend to the council approval of Mr. Anderson's application as well.
Okay. Alderwoman Terry?
I agree with my colleague. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The resume speaks for itself. It's very impressive, and I would use that as quite enough evidence for me to recommend his appointment.
I concur.
So I made a motion to recommend favorably to the council.
Oh, I knew that was out there. I second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And next we have
Resiliency.
resiliency. Is Mr. Neese here?
Yep.
All right.
In the back. Dan, did you have a handout or any material?
No, I gotta be honest, I'm not exactly sure why I'm here, but
Oh.
I'll do my best to wing it.
Well,
All right.
You're filling the resiliency position for the city, right?
Oh, I am, alright. Do I get to state my terms now?
Yeah, right. We'll negotiate.
So I invite
That's gonna work out for either one of us.
I invited you here to talk about your efforts as part of the transition team,
Okay.
talk about the work you do, but also to talk about the work you may be doing for the city.
Sure.
I believe I found out recently. So anything you could tell us about that would be appreciated.
So I work at the University of Maryland, College Park, specifically in the...
You need to press your green light.
Sorry. Thanks, Pete. Hey, how you doing? I work at the University of Maryland, College Park in a program called the Center for Global Sustainability. located in the School of Public Policy. So I guess there's two things going on. One was I was asked to be on the transition team for finance. We actually came and presented our findings
Right.
Earlier this year. And my focus on that project was to discuss the institutional capacity of the city to address climate change and resilience moving forward, which I did. At the same time, my organization was awarded a grant from the Department of Natural Resources to work in the cities of Annapolis and Salisbury. And the focus of our work is to assess the capacity of the city to finance resilience infrastructure into the future. We are probably 3/4 of the way through that project. We anticipate being done in mid-fall. And that's essentially what I do. So my background, I've spent the last 15 or 20 years working with local government throughout the Mid-Atlantic region, primarily focused on how to finance water quality restoration and protection, and specifically to achieve Chesapeake Bay restoration requirements. Done a lot of work on stormwater finance. I've worked with the city of Annapolis quite a bit on stormwater finance. And so over the past few years, I've transitioned more to climate change issues. So what I'm doing now, and along with my partners on the project, is going through systematically the processes and the institutions and the capacities within the city to finance resilience. We're also, again, doing this in Salisbury. And then when we're done, we refer to it as the Resilience Stress Test Project. And so we make no apologies for that. We're trying to do the same thing that you would do with a bank or any other financing institution, which is to gauge its capacity to address a very difficult situation, and that is what the city will be facing and is facing. So that's what we do, and we'll, deliver our findings pretty soon. And then our goal is to continue working in the city and to actually incentivize and channel investment into the city in these efforts. One thing that I should point out, this is not a stormwater financing project. That is not what we are doing. We will engage very little on the city's stormwater program. That has been addressed. You have the right people working on that issue. And you also have the state of Maryland and the Environmental Protection Agency encouraging you to address that issue. So there's just really not a lot we can say and do on that hasn't been said and done. And so that is not what we are talking about. We are looking at long-term resilience, mostly climate change, but not exclusively. So just to create that distinction.
Is that for the entire, are you looking at the entire city or just certain?
The entire city.
parts of the city? Mhm.
Yeah, so I can't give you all of the findings right now
Yeah.
because we're still in the process, specifically on the finance side. So we've gone through all the planning processes, and Pete and his staff have been extremely helpful and cooperative in our efforts to do that. Now we are going through the financing processes. Some of that was done through the transition process. And then next is identifying what are the things that need to be done. So, but I can tell you a few things that the city needs to focus on immediately. The first is this city does not have a resilience plan, period. Now, I say that to people in the city and they say, oh, sure we do. We have a disaster plan and we have a historic structures plan and we have a comprehensive plan. All of them are important. All of them have elements of resilience in it. The city does not have a plan. More importantly, the city does not have a vision for what it's going to be 50 years from now. What's it going to look like? How are we going to protect what we want to protect? What are the industries and the economies that we want to grow? And that has to be in place. I do finance for a living, and right now the message we are sending to the city is, I don't know what you want us to pay for. There's nothing in front of us to say this is what we need to do. Does the city want a wall? Does it want to lift all the buildings? Does it want to, do something with the housing projects? Does it want to focus on economic development? What does it want to do? And we have not seen that. Now, this administration, and then, by the way, we started this work with the past administration, and both of them have been very progressive in trying to move forward on these issues. They are beginning to move down this path, but I can tell you, you guys are part of this conversation. The entire city council has to be part of this conversation because the entire city has to be part of this conversation. We are in a position to move capital now, but we have to have something to move it to, and that's an issue here. I wish it was unique to Annapolis, but it's not. This is the same we see in lots of places. You have the Rockefeller 100 communities that had, got $1 million to come up with a plan. They have plans. Most other communities don't have the plans that we need to see to actually move capital to infrastructure. But, as you saw in the transition report, there's some very real concerns in this city as it relates to finance and capacity. But that said, this city is in very good position to be able to address this issue. I was actually thinking about it. We just had a very productive meeting earlier this morning on these issues with leaders from around the region and finance experts at the same time. And it occurred to me, figuring out how we're going to finance resilience and infrastructure into the future is a significantly easier undertaking than getting the city to agree on what its vision 50 years from now will be. That's you guys to do that, and that's the real challenge. We can figure out how to bring capital in. That's not going to be a challenge. It's figuring out how to get everybody on an agreement what we want to be. And I say we, by the way. I'm a citizen of this, resident of this city, and I know from firsthand experience that that's going to be a very difficult thing to accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely. Alderman Ryan.
So from the Weather Together operations, we know there's 3 strategies: abandonment, lifting, or walling off. The abandonment is probably the easiest one, but not the most desirable one.
Physically
Yes.
easier, right.
Although I guess you have to take care of the debris that's now underwater. But we talk about things like lifting all the buildings down at City Dock, which I know from an engineering perspective is possible, but does run into things like the cultural landscape studies and things like that. And as it happens during lunch, I was talking with someone about strategies that would have to do with building a seawall. This was actually in connection with potential plans for the downtown City Dock redevelopment, and connecting to what I still think are the plans of the Academy. You talked to us at one point about the new kinds of, I think they were called social bonds, the kinds of things. And what I hear you saying is, if we're going to want to do some kind of funding like that, the very first step is to come up with a plan for what we want to do: lift the buildings or build a wall.
Yeah. So, and I don't, and I'm gonna, the next meeting I have with Pete, he's gonna be angry with me because I'm gonna talk about planning, and I know nothing about planning. But I will say that when I say when I say that we need a plan, that doesn't mean we say right now this wall will be right here, or we're going to abandon all of Eastport. And I apologize, but Eastport's our biggest problem, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it really is our biggest problem. What is much more important is to say, we have a vision of our future. This is where we want to be. And we're going to put the systems in place that are necessary for us to achieve that vision. We don't know if it's lifting everything up. We don't know if it's putting a wall up. We don't know if it's abandonment. Probably be some of that. There may be technologies we haven't even identified yet, right, that we don't even know. But this is the place that you incentivize the industry and the economy and the action around resilience. And that's what I meant by a plan. We have to have the systems in place that enable us to find the solutions to those problems. And that requires a very different way of thinking, a very different way of financing, and it's quite honestly, it's building an industry and an economy around resilience. Right. And the communities around the world that are going to be out ahead on this issue are doing exactly that. They see climate change not just as a huge threat, but also as a tremendous opportunity to their communities, and they're going to do something about it. And I just think this is the place that should happen. So I don't know exactly what the technologies are. That's not what I do. I can help you figure out how to pay for them once you've identified the technologies. But what matters more than anything is you have a decision-making and financing system that's progressive, it's innovative, and moving us toward that vision. I mean, we all know that we have some major battles coming down the line when it comes to things like historic resources and cultural resources versus the climate issue and versus the environment and versus jobs and everything that's going to go into that. I'm not, we don't have to solve those today, but we have to have a system in place that sends the signal that this is a progressive, innovative community that's going to work through those issues. Because if we don't, we're going to have some of the best, most beautiful historic structures underwater anywhere in the country.
So, Mr. Chair, can we ask Mr. Gutwald to join at the table, please?
Sure, Mr. Gutwald.
Plan.
Sorry about that, Pete.
I keep hearing the word vision and plan, and I subscribe to both of those. But I miss our dearly departed Lisa Craig, and I do miss the whole Weather Together exercise. And I guess the only reason for dragging you into this, Pete, is where are we? I talked to, well,
We just had a meeting this afternoon.
Yeah.
This
Yeah,
morning.
Ms.
Okay.
Kyle, come on.
yeah. Right. We- Good, well, because we had a good head of steam going, and we do have a great partner in the Naval Academy, and I'd hate to see us lag behind, and certainly don't want it to be construed, at least on my part, but I think generally, and maybe Ellie can chime in too, the city council is very interested in this, did participate in all the Weather Together exercises. I think we have been on the vanguard. I think linking the history with the FEMA plans was a good marriage. I just want to make sure we are continuing it. You guys are busy and we don't even know it, and we're not getting in your way.
I'll start and I'll let Jackie pick up from there, but, yeah, this is perfect timing because Kevin, I'll give him the credit, he initiated, once Jackie got on board, about us, as I constantly said under that Cultural Resource Hazard Mitigation Plan adoption process, I said it's a team effort. It's not any one given department that's going to be saddled with the budgetary issues, but Alderman Savage mentioned that this is a lot of work and how you're going to get it done. So Kevin initiated a meeting as soon as Jackie got on board. She came and visited me. I gave her the whole lowdown on that big old document of the Cultural Resource Hazard Mitigation Plan, and the perfect timing with this question is we had our first inaugural meeting, if you will, of the three departments, four, because Public Works is a partner as well, and discussing what is the first steps, what are the what are the things we're going to start off with, and then talked about a bunch of different grant opportunities. And I'll let Jackie go from there if she wants to.
Oh, no.
Make sure you're speaking.
No, go ahead. Oh, okay. I agree with you, Dan, that my frustration is I've been an advocate of the City Dock Master Plan, and it identifies strategies. And my frustration was, that's all well and good, but what is the plan for this implementation of these strategies? And I'm not very politically correct in the sense that I understand the Lisa Craig thing, but I feel like we know enough we heard about flooding for 4 years. She raised the awareness, but as far as implementation
And
or
getting the money.
or getting anything done, no.
Right.
I'm
And
sorry.
by the way, I didn't mean to imply that there weren't conversations happening around these issues in the city.
No,
There are,
I
and
just-
there are very smart people that are
No,
leading the
I'm
conversation.
not discrediting her at all, but I mean, and I
Right.
don't feel like we need to be lectured to from her now with this article she has in the newspaper. I'm sorry, we spent a lot of time listening to Weathering It Together when she was abandoning, our historic property issue, and so no, I think this is a great time for a fresh start, but I'm a little bit concerned on the City Dock Master Plan, and is that a throwaway document at this time? I mean, are we looking at that?
That's way above my pay grade, so I don't know.
See, that's what
I
worries
just want
me,
to
'cause
clarify
there's
what
a-
I'm saying that the city needs.
Yeah, okay.
The city needs, and I'm saying this as a person, again, I do finance for a living. And so I had a meeting today with
Yeah.
investors who were
Yeah.
in the city talking about this issue and what it would take for them to invest in these issues. And what they were saying is, invest in what?
Yeah.
What are you asking us to invest in? We recognize how important historic resources are, and they
Yeah.
do. What are we asking them to invest in? Are we gonna lift those resources up? Are we gonna build a wall around those resources? Are
Yeah.
we going to abandon those resources? And so,
But we're
this
spending-
is the conversation that
Yeah.
we've been having with the
Okay.
entire city staff. It
Yeah.
is, how do you move from the plan to the CIP to writing the check? And what's the process for moving that in place? That's what we're needing to put in place. I'm not, so I know it's just much more fun to have these conversations when I make it sound like everything is falling apart.
It's probably a
That's
great
not what I meant to
approach,
say.
instead of trying to.
What I'm saying is
yeah.
that we need something to
Yeah.
point the investors to, and we're still
Yeah.
waiting for
Well,
that.
that's understandable. I
Jackie
mean,
has
I
that
think
answer.
we do need an action plan. You know, I think we've done a decent job with some of the mitigation work, but not the adaptation
Right.
side of things. I mean, we do have the cultural hazard plan that we've put together, but we don't have anything that really looks at the entire city. I have areas in my ward that are going to be affected by sea level rise just as much as downtown, but we haven't looked at that.
So Jackie's just waiting to give us all these.
I know,
Jackie,
we're giving
Ms.
you a
Scott.
commercial break here.
No.
Yeah.
We have done, you know, there's several plans, the hazard mitigation plan the hazard mitigation plan, we have the cultural awareness, Weather It Together. Most of these things are identifying strategies and possibilities, but we don't, as Dan points out, we need a resiliency plan. That would actually, so I guess we need to do that right away. It would help us focus our grant application process. There's a number of grants available through DNR and Chesapeake Bay Trust right now. Some of them are stormwater related, some of them are capacity related, and some can be resiliency and climate change related. But if we can do these things spotty, but that's not really, you know, if we had a plan to follow, it would direct the very scant resources, the three bodies that we have in OEP especially, you know, towards the most efficient and greatest use of our time.
So who does that plan, and what help do you need from us?
Well, we don't have there was talk about having a director of resiliency, but I think that's me right now. So, I think I look at what all these plans we've done, and I had the hazard mitigation plan right in front of me because we were using this today in the group that we formed, and we have a lot of good objectives and goals and strategies, and we need to pick those. I guess, we could come up with, and working with Pete and David Gerald, come up with several what we think are the best strategies, and then present them to this committee and go forward from there to make a plan. What Pete was alluding to is earlier, we met about the first project we want to undertake, which is the community rating system. And that's so that the city residents can get flood insurance at a much cheaper rate. There's a whole process you have to go through, a checklist, and we applied for a grant, which we've done everything but get it in hand. There's a final step we have to go through. One is to go through this checklist. It's a pretty extensive checklist to show where we rate right now, what our number score would be, and to submit a letter of intent from the mayor. We met, the 4 departments met so we could make assignments to all of us and to gather this information that's needed. We've set ourselves a deadline of August 8th to get the information to Racine Hodo, who's going to be the project leader, and then get it in hopefully within the next week to know what, so that we can be finalized on the grant to move forward with CRS. That's the first project that was part of the hazard mitigation plan. There's A through K, and that's A. And that's just one step in the right direction, but that's not a resiliency plan.
No.
So we need to pull from all of these plans and studies we've done and form a plan. That's all.
I thank you, I appreciate that, and especially that last comment. I have a question for you. What is in it for all of the residents of the city's housing projects if we protect downtown or Eastport?
Well, so I think, I don't think there are any of the, if you're saying housing, you mean public housing?
Yeah.
I don't know that any of them are in immediate danger. I think they're in the next 50 years after Echelon, and we will have to plan for that. I think the immediate concern is pretty much identified in the hazard mitigation. It's downtown and it's Eastport. I think this is a time, I was just at a luncheon meeting where I was bringing up a plan that Craig Purcell, an architect that works in Baltimore, had from years ago about putting a one-level underground parking garage under the whole of City Dock, but making that also the seawall. So it wouldn't be totally underground. You would put it in, it would be impermeable. You have to figure out how you have to carry it around to the Eastport Bridge. But that would be a financial investment. It would have to be integrated with the Naval Academy levies or whatever they're going to do. But that is a real investment issue. So if, I'm not a big fan of having more parking downtown, but if you wanted to do that strategy and you wanted to make that, the wall of that garage, the beginnings of a seawall, and then you have to figure out how you carry it across Market Slip and around over to the bridge, I think with the Navy, that would protect us for the next 50 or 100 years for downtown. It would be a very real investment. It would have to be a shared kind of thing. The city would have to agree that it wants parking under there. But while you're doing that, you'd have to sink the sheet piles all the way down to the bedrock and build the impermeable wall. You would have to plan to raise the level of Campbell Park and all the other things, including the slips and so forth. But I can foresee right now that we need to come to grips with that as we're thinking about what to do with potential redevelopment of the Harvey Blonder property down on City Dock. And so I like the way you've focused us, Dan, into think about something that somebody could actually invest in. Now, I guess I would return the question, they're not doing that for grins, they want some kind of return.
Sure.
So would their return be in terms of building a partial seawall with parking that they would share in parking revenue, or the parking revenue would help defray the cost of doing the seawall? I'm trying to figure out what they're looking for, the potential investors.
I don't know enough about the idea that you're talking about, so this is the first time that I've
Sure.
heard it. But I would suggest that the strategy the city needs to think about is how to blend its financing to the financing within the market. So if that seawall is connected to what we want to do or the city wants to have accomplished, including the market activity that's down there, you would figure out how to bundle those projects together to make them work. I just wanted to clarify, and that's what we're working on with the city, which is to figure out how can you take multiple projects, pull them together, bundle them, and then put them out
What
to
a
bid.
concept.
That you bring this, exactly, and so it sounds like a simple concept, yet it's not done, and that's what we're trying to work with the
Right.
city.
Well, things are just-
It also
yeah.
takes institutions that the city often,
Right.
this city doesn't have. It's gonna have to be done in a different way. I wanna clarify the question I asked about the housing projects. The point that I'm making is, and this was a criticism of the Weather It Together process, that it was dedicated to relatively wealthy residents that had bought property that was in harm's way and had bought historic property, and that
Right.
the people that live back, I don't know, like me, don't
Right.
get a lot of benefit from what we're talking about investing. Resilience is not just about flooding and sea level rise. That is important, especially in a coastal community like Annapolis. It's essential in this community, and our sea level is rising twice as fast as the rest of the globe, and we have to address that. But the capacity of a community to respond to catastrophic events is resilience, and that could be any event. It could be an opioid crisis running through our community, catching us off guard, which, by the way, could very much happen anytime now.
Sure.
It could be a cyber attack, which shuts down all of our systems. It could be a storm that doesn't just flood us, but cuts us off from the grid. And now we're sitting as a peninsula in a position of not having power for quite some time. There are any number of things. Now, a lot of that's in the hazard mitigation plan. But from an investment perspective and from a broader perspective, we're saying the whole community has to be engaged and involved. So this gets back to your question about where are the returns? The returns are in just like any way you minimize risk in an investment. You broaden them, you move them across multiple places, multiple industries, multiple economies, and you bundle projects together. I had a conversation recently about Hillman Garage. And the question is, what are we going to do and how are we going to pay for it? Now, when I talk to finance people, like I did this morning, they're like, it'll take you 3 minutes to get investors on the phone to help you pay for a parking garage. That's easy.
Mhm.
We know how to do that. But if it's part of a broader resilience plan that's linking the idea you have of a wall or that more parking spaces. So we had the meeting when we were talking about that and we brought up 400 parking spots and it was like, well, why not 800? I mean, we've always got a lack of parking in this city. What if we attach to the market and to the bidding process more parking spaces? And you start bringing all of these things together. Now you got a place where investors can engage and you make parking part of resilience and connected. It could be connected to the projects, the housing projects. What if all of them were on microgrids and they were pulled off the system and you were able to dramatically reduce the cost of energy in those places, as well as city property, as well as state property and everything else we have. That's the kind of plan that we need, and when you start pulling all those things together, now you have real investment involved. Now the grants that you're talking about getting are catalytic,
Right.
moving you into much bigger investment.
So I like that, but it fills a need that the city, and particularly the city council, has never filled, and I think has largely been unwilling to fill, because early in your remarks you used the word vision. We don't have a vision, we the council, and you're right, I like this broadening the scope, but I'm thinking about this committee, we're environmental matters. I think the kinds of issues you're raising are council-wide
Absolutely.
kinds of issues.
Resilience is a council-wide conversation.
And so I don't think we have a mechanism set up for that.
How many people are, and I should know this, doing what I do for a living and living here, how many people are on the council?
9, the mayor and
You
8
have a
council
vision,
members.
the problem is you have 9 visions.
Yeah,
That's the problem.
right, I know.
Right, and so, but that's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's an asset. You have
Right.
9 people who are dedicated to the issue and have a vision for what it should be. You also have, and I am not saying this just because you surrounded me by your staff, without telling me you were gonna surround me by your staff, by the way.
Yeah, we got
They
you.
are extremely capable. This is a city that punches above its weight class. I mean, there's a lot of really smart, capable people here. It's not a question of capacity in that regard. This city has the capacity. You'll notice in the transition document, we made no recommendation on capacity. It didn't exist. And I had no dog in the fight at that point. The issue was, we are still a city of 40-some-odd thousand people with limited budget and limited resources with a massive infrastructure problem on our hands. It requires a single vision. And so I disagree that you don't have vision. What you don't have is a collective vision.
Right.
And that's what we have to figure
Well,
out.
I think we also need to take some different approaches. I think once we do have a vision, it'll be helpful to give that to the mayor, because I think, and this is related to, how does this benefit public housing, those kind of neighborhoods? In the sense that, in one sense, we've got downtown, which is really the heart of the city. We also have the Maritime District in my ward, which is very important to the industry of the city.
It's getting
but
bigger.
it's
The
so-
sea level rise.
Yeah, but it's something that, my point is, it's kind of something the state is going to need to help with. We've had Ocean City, who has had special sales tax authority. I think in this case, we need to give this information, once we have it, to the mayor, who can take it to the state and say, hey, we have all these projects we need to do to protect our capital and to protect our assets. Can we get an authority to at least have some ability to generate some more
Right.
funding and to allow the tourists to actually pay into
Yeah.
this effort? Because right now,
Right.
they're really not. And I think another thing to look at are some of the ecological end of it, in terms of tying it with the stormwater, right? And so as sea level rise, we will lose our wetlands unless we
Unless you allow
factor
them to
in
move, yeah.
unless we factor in the wetland expansion
Right.
areas. And so that's something where I think zoning is going to have to work with OEP. But I'm also wondering, so as homeowners see their property vanishing, their first instinct is going to be to build a wall. And so I think we need to be there ready with funding, yes, maybe we can get some groups who will help put money forward to say, we'll give you some money if you want to help put in a living shoreline, and here's how living shoreline can help you more so than just building a wall. That'll help us out with stormwater and with all these other
It
things.
could buy you time, for sure, and
Yeah.
that's been a big part of the conversation with natural infrastructure and living shoreline specifically. It's not a long-term solution, but if you look at financing as a short, medium, and long-term
Yeah.
need, that would be part of your short-term option, which buys you some time. I want to just, you make an interesting point about the state engaging, and both Jackie and Pete also brought up the issue of grants, which are important. And I have to preface this by saying my entire career has been funded by grants. I work for a soft-funded organization, and we bring in grants. But, so I'm going to make up numbers. Let's just assume, and one of the things that we've been doing is going through all the planning documents with Pete's help and others, and looking at the specific projects that are in those documents, and doing our best to put a dollar sign next to each of them. And so let's assume for a second, and this is a major assumption, that adds up to, you know, $500 million worth of projects over time. And you do the math and you figure, well, you know, we can, so that's, you know, let's assume
Big
that's
sales
like
tax.
$25 million a year, and we can maybe invest $5 million a year or $10 million a year or something like that. Do you really care where the other $10 to $15 million comes from? No, you don't care. It could be a grant, it could be the governor, or it could be the market.
Mm-hmm.
Because someone has seen an opportunity associated with the properties in Eastport
Yeah.
and having natural infrastructure help buffer what they're trying to do. Or it could be somebody's looking at the city's watershed plan and identifying those projects that are about to go into the ground, and they see value in the properties that they own and how they could piggyback on some of those things. That's what we're talking about. We're not saying that the market is going to save Annapolis. We're saying that Annapolis is going to save Annapolis by leveraging the market and by understanding it has an obligation in the infrastructure, but a lot of this infrastructure and a lot of the need could be in the marketplace. So we don't really, I would argue that the governor, and I say the governor in general, though it doesn't matter who's sitting in that position, would be much more inclined to engage in Annapolis if Annapolis had gone through the type of process that I'm talking about and saying, we got a really innovative system for moving this forward. And now we want your help, because by the way, if you invest some estate money in it, you're going to get a return unlike any other place that you go to. That's the system that we're talking about putting in place. And I think that when just looking at the plans as they exist now, we see these opportunities everywhere. So to bring it a conversation full circle, that's what I'm doing. We're hoping to do for the city. Again, we've been working directly with the leaders in the city on making that happen, and we see great opportunity. So.
But
But
the-
again, Alderwoman Terry has been.
Okay, oh, thank you. Well,
Trying
that's,
to get in
that's
there.
another refreshing thing is that and you mentioned this in the finance transition report, is that interconnectedness, I can't say that word, between departments, and the fact that you're meeting with DPW, planning and zoning, and Jackie, et cetera, and that's really important. But, so if I understand this correctly, because I totally agree on the weather it together thing. I mean, I would even have, you know, houses on, even within Ward 1 that would say, well, what about me? You know, because the objective was, this is how we're going to save, you know, the Hammond Howard house and all that good stuff. And so it was very microcosm as far as Ward 1. But it looks like your study is expanding it to the city, and you're going to be looking at the optimal use in the spectrum of resiliency, always within the spectrum of resiliency. What is the optimal use of our city resources? Is that sort of a fair statement? Like you brought up.
Yes, but backing into it. So what we are looking at is, where are there opportunities to incentivize investment into the city?
Okay.
By definition, if you're able to incentivize private investment into projects in the city, that would not be the optimal place for you to put the city's money, because if you were able to bring in private capital. So the answer is yes, but we're extrapolating to get to that
Right.
particular answer.
But even if we're looking at something like, and I don't know how familiar you are with this, but major projects like Crystal Spring, you've probably
Very,
heard about that. Do you? Peter's shaking his head. Is
'Cause
that-
I'm
is
gagging.
that-
Crystal Springs anymore.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
I mean, I'm just saying that that's sort of you always have that resiliency equation as a parameter to weigh it against, that's all. But my question is, the Naval Academy, you gotta know that they share a coastline and all that good stuff, so how do they tie into all of this?
Well, just so you know, we are in the process of engaging them, and actually David is facilitating conversations, and I know the people over there well. So how that fits in? Well, if the Naval Academy and the federal government are gonna pay for something, you're not,
Mhm.
right? So they can't accomplish their goals when it comes to, and now I'm talking strictly about climate change and sea level rise specifically, also to, I guess, almost the equal extent, the catastrophic storm events. They can't be successful addressing those issues without the city engaging, and the city can't be successful engaging on those issues without them engaging. So you have a natural dance partner in the Naval Academy. So that's the obvious thing. I should have mentioned that not only are we querying the budget, the planning documents for these projects, we're going through another process where we're saying, what are the assets in the city that you bring to the table that could help incentivize investment? Well, one of the biggest assets this community has is the Naval Academy. It leads to economic impact in the city. I've not seen the studies, but someone has had to have done a study on the economic impact of the Naval Academy on the city, and it has to be very, very real,
Right.
and it's probably one of the bigger impacts in the city. That's important, because now you have a true dance partner in finance and economic development in the federal government. And then a final comment to make, if there are two institutions who know more about climate change than any on the planet. The first is the insurance industry. Right? They know more, they're not climate change deniers, they will tell you straight up this is happening and there's a reason why they're insuring certain places. And the second one is the Department of Defense. They've been studying this for a long time, they have more data than just about any other institution, and they take it very, very seriously. And you don't have to look any further than when the hurricane hit, they were teaching classes on boats. They know what they're in for.
Right.
And so you have now this partner with capacity, at least some capacity, who gets it and is engaged and wants what you want. That's the role of the Naval Academy, and it is a partner that is very unique to this community. One of my partners in this project has been the city of Newport, and actually my partner there was here today for this meeting, and we had lunch together, and he was talking about the difference between the city of Annapolis' relationship with the Naval Academy and the city of Newport's relationship with the War College, and it's a very different relationship. The War College after 9/11 was walled off. You do not go into the War College anymore, and it is now this separate little thing off to the side with relatively little economic impact to the rest of the city now because they had to do that. We are very lucky that we still have this institution here that we can have as a partner in what we're trying to do. And I would, you guys already have a great relationship with them. I get that. Now we're trying to figure out what that means from a finance perspective, and we'll work with you on that.
Okay.
So, 2 quick points. I think you were at the conference at CERT several years ago.
Yeah.
The second day was when we had Wall Street down.
Yeah.
All the money, the state is chump change. The money is on Wall Street. So our job is to figure out, and I think that one of the things they said to us is, if you will underwrite the risk, we can invest in projects with a very low rate of return. So we need to be developing this plan that's going to be attractive to Wall Street more than any other. Forget grants, forget the state. We do need to figure out how we finance that investment. But I think this committee, not because of this committee, but the people that are on it, are ideally situated to be the catalyst to drive us. Remember, the mayor is part of the council, and we do have to get to this united vision. And I think we are fairly soon going to be needing to make decisions about abandon, lift, wall off. Maybe we can take it upon ourselves as a committee to start building a vision statement about how we want to do it. And I take Dan's point, resiliency isn't just sea level. It's much bigger than that. And I keep forgetting that, particularly because of the focus of Weather Together. But I think maybe we just need somebody to give us a boot in the butt and get us to work together as a council and come up with a shared vision. And we have a lot of vigor with the new members on the council. And I think we have some experience with the holdovers, but I think we just need to have some part of us start driving the council towards coming up with that shared vision. I think everybody's afraid to do a shared vision because they're afraid their particular interests are gonna get lost in the shuffle or prioritized or whatever. We gotta get beyond that. We really do have to think about, and I think our job in particular as council members, what is Annapolis gonna look like? What do I want it to look like because of my service 20 years from now or 50 years from now? So maybe we can make a commitment after the hearing to be the catalyst to drive us towards that. I think it would make Jackie and Pete, everybody else's job easier if we sort of said, you know, try this on for size. We think wall here, abandon there, and lift here. Then they can tell us the feasibility of that, and Dan can tell us the financing of that.
I one final point, and I just, hopefully this is clear. There are a lot of people, and this city has access to a lot of people and institutions that want to see this problem solved. There's the city is unique in the fact that it's the state capital. And so you couple that again with the very skilled people you have working in your agencies right now. This is just a unique place and a unique opportunity. I'm obviously not going anywhere because I live here too. But there really are the resources available to solve this problem and move it into the long term.
And Alderman Tierney?
I'm going to go a little micro on you here. I know that you addressed it early in your talk, but I don't want the flood mitigation project to be an oops. Oops, we should have looked at that in our evaluation. Are you comfortable that that is something that is independently addressing an issue that is separate than...
When you say flood mitigation, you mean the...
Pump houses,
dealing with-
the flood, the
The two pumps
AECom,
down
the
in town.
AECom
Yeah.
project.
The pumps are all going over to Eastport.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we're placing pumps. My angst
big
is-
hose that
yeah,
goes on.
yeah. Well, my
Well-
angst is that we're placing pumps on city property that I don't know if that's the best use of that property.
Yeah, so you're...
Well, we also don't have a broader vision.
Yeah, broader
Yeah,
vision.
I'd be
to tie
totally out of my realm to say that from an engineering perspective, yes, you're ready, go ahead and do this. What I care more about, and I'm not just trying to punt on the question, I just want to be clear about what finance can do. If somebody who does finance is saying, oh yeah, you ought to put that wall in place and we can help you pay for it, just run, because they don't know what they're talking about. Now, once you have the engineers say, this is what makes the most sense, then you bring them in and they'll help you figure out how to pay for it. What I care about more than even that is that the city has the systems in place that allow it to react and to move in the short, mid, and long term on these issues. So you won't know. So there's some things we all know just because we've been reading the newspaper, right? So backflow preventers, pumps, things like that. That's a short-term solution.
Right.
It's not really high risk, right? Because they weren't meant to do more than just for the next 5 to 10 years or however long it is. So there's not a lot of risk there. Another very low risk investment, quite honestly, is what Jackie runs, the green infrastructure. It's because it has so much other value to the community that we know we're really not rolling the dice on that. What you care about in the mid and long term isn't necessarily the specific technology. We don't know right now if we need a seawall. We don't know if we need to retreat from Eastport yet, or maybe we figure something out we never do, right? Maybe, I don't know. I don't want to sound optimistic when we really should be scared as hell. But what matters more is that we're thinking 30 years from now in our financing systems and our planning systems. And we're thinking, and that Pete is saying, yeah, I don't know yet. I don't know. But here's what we got to be thinking about as we move forward, and here's our process for doing that. That matters much more at this stage, so that you can take advantage of the short-term stuff and know that it's leading to a process that you're going to be building on and you can take advantage of later. The final thing I'll say is that this is an economic development opportunity unlike any our city has ever had in front of it before. Resilience is everything right now, and nobody gets it. We're talking about making this the most innovative city in the world on this issue. That's our goal. That's what we're trying to have happen. And when that happens, this isn't just about infrastructure. It's about a way of life. It's about jobs. It's about everything that goes into that. And quite honestly, I love Newport. It's my second home. I mean, I go there all the time. Paul Carroll is a very good friend, and he's the director of economic development there. And I am trying to kick his butt in this matter. We are trying to get ahead of everybody on this issue, and the city of Annapolis has that opportunity. So if you can't get a vision from all of your constituents on a seawall or protecting historic structures or even on the housing projects and other parts of our community, then sell them on economic development, because that's what this is going to be, bigger than anything we've seen before. And that's what this really comes down to. That's the financing system. So put the backflow preventers in, but let's start moving this in a way that kind of trumps the rest of the world on it. Excuse the pun.
All right, well,
And
Director.
I got a swim meet that I got to go to. Not
Okay.
me, my kids, but
Okay.
I apologize.
Well, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
And
See ya.
Director Gutwald or Gild, would either of you like to say anything else about this?
Not about resiliency, but I have a couple of other things.
Oh, yeah, I'll give you time. Let me just say, final thing on this.
No?
I do, Alderman Arnett, I think you're right on. We do have a lot of potential here, especially with these two wonderful directors and the new vision and energy and OEP, as well with Ms. Gild. I think we have a lot of potential to bring things together. Yes, then who's not here, but DPW also is doing a lot of great work. And just to plant a seed in my colleague's head, I think we will need to, for next year's budget, hopefully we'll be in a better situation. But I think we will need to start to think about, well, not a director, but I think a dedicated position at the least in one of these departments. You know, I kind of have my own thinking on where would be appropriate, but in any case, I think that's also something for, I think, especially OEP to look at is potential grant funding for those positions.
Exactly.
I mean, all
Yep.
of emergency management funds, most of their 90% of their positions, their budget's even grant funded. So
Right.
I think there's the same potential for the resiliency work, but we need to. But I understand it may be difficult to get some of that funding without a clear plan.
Right.
Although I think the hazard mitigation plan will help in that regard. So let's see what else.
I think Jackie wanted to say a couple.
Oh, well, yeah, she has some other. Let me just look at the agenda, Jackie.
Be honest again. Is that hazard mitigation plan, is that gonna bog you down? I mean, is that the one that's 11 by 17 and
Yes,
there's
this-
like
this big boy
5,000
right here,
categories?
Yeah, this one right here.
And there's
Yeah.
a worksheet where it's,
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah, the culture
Yeah.
resilience, yeah, we
I
have
mean,
that.
that's gonna.
You're aware of we do have a spreadsheet that's in
Yeah,
there.
that's what I'm referring to.
So,
In the back.
right.
Yeah, in the back.
And so we're just kind of going down through it, and we just
Okay.
identified CRS as the first place to start.
Okay, so you're evaluating because I see that as an immense, I mean, we don't
Huge
want to
undertaking.
bog you down with unnecessary or, how do you decipher something like that? I don't know, I'm just asking. Well, good luck.
Thank you.
So I just want to ask. So Director God does want to have things to talk about, but I also know Director Gutwald is here to talk about the development update. Is there any time restriction on? I know Director Gutwald's here for the duration. Pete, do you have any limitation?
4 o'clock.
Okay. Okay. Well, do you want to jump into some of your items?
I just have a quick item here that needs to be addressed. What did I just do with it? What I want to bring to your attention is that Section 14 of the code, which deals with pruning and removal of trees, the urban forester brought to my attention that in Section B, it has, the code says that we can trim trees up to 13 feet to allow passage of vehicles, but the fire department needs them trimmed up to 15 feet. I think with some new ladder trucks that are larger, they don't have sufficient room to pass. So that's a simple amendment to the code that needs to be made to change the word from 13 to 15 feet. So I just need, if someone wishes to sponsor that, we can have Jackie Lee draft up legislation for that.
Yeah. Anybody here want to sponsor?
Sure, I'll.
Do we need to have BG&E look at that? I mean, I know there's an issue with them having access. Are they involved at all in that?
I don't think the lines are affected, it's just the tree limbs, is to
Okay.
give us the authority to trim the
Yeah.
trees up to 15 feet, and
Okay.
so that the fire trucks can pass underneath,
Okay. Yeah,
without pulling down limbs that might pull down lines.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you can add myself and
Okay.
Alderman Arnett as a sponsor for now.
Okay.
Do you want to get added at all?
I'll co-sponsor, I've got two, yeah, I'll co-sponsor.
Okay.
So Alderman Savage and Alderwoman Tierney are the sponsors of this?
And me.
And all three of you,
Yeah.
okay, all right. I will have Jacqueline Lee start drafting that then.
Okay.
So that's 1412-150?
It's 1412-150B,
Right, I see it.
yep,
And we're changing from 10 feet to 15?
from
13
13
to
feet to
15.
15 feet.
Okay,
Yeah, no, it's the fourth line down where it has clearance of 13 feet. We need that changed to 15 feet.
okay.
Thank you for vetting the code.
Absolutely. We also had, there was a resolution that was pending, 2618, but Ms. Sutherland asked that it be removed. There was some confusion over what it was supposed to accomplish. This was in regard to the Maryland Energy Administration grant that we received, $55,000 to reduce our carbon footprint, basically, for energy efficiencies and energy use reduction. The grant requires the city to adopt two policies: one, to reduce energy consumption, and to increase energy efficiencies. So there was a resolution that was drafted, and there was a lot of questions going back and forth from the city manager's office to my office and the Office of Law as to how it was written. Racine was trying to pull the resolution for me today. I don't think we ever found the final version of it that
Okay.
Teresa was referring to, but I think she took it off the agenda for Monday
Yeah.
because there was confusion over how it was written.
Yeah, and it was taken off, for my colleagues' sake, it was taken off the agenda for this meeting.
Yes.
There were some just concerns, but I think with some of how it was written, not necessarily a disagreement with the underlying intention. Although it did say that we're supposed, I think what the city manager was indicating is that she would like to see us clearly adopt these two commitments, two goals. Although I think in many ways we've already done that, and at least met the goals, and we're kind of adopting goals to meet what we've already met.
Right.
But I think we may need to get those included as a resolution. We could always try to rush that, suspend the rules if we need to get that done. Is there a deadline to get those passed?
Is there a deadline on it? October, yeah, October, I think
Okay.
October 1st to get them done.
We should be able, if we get that introduced in the first meeting in
In September?
September, we should be able to.
We should be
get done, I
fine,
think.
okay.
Yeah, because we don't need a public hearing on a resolution, it just, introduced.
And a
and voted
resolution
on.
is the proper method by which to adopt these policies, correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay, all right, just want to make sure.
We don't want it to be permanently in the code, we just want to be standing behind,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Exactly.
resolution.
yeah.
Okay. All right, is there anything else you had for me?
No, I guess if you want to get those resolutions to us, we can,
Okay,
I know, I at least for one will co-sponsor
okay.
those as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Racine.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I have
Anything else?
at the moment.
Okay, Director Gutwald, would you like to give any update on the development issues?
Sure, there's not a whole lot of changes since the last one, unless there's
Okay.
questions from the committee. I'll just try and highlight some of the ones related to the forest conservation that we've been doing, and I don't think there's much else that's been updated. The one thing I'll highlight, which is probably, it's not really related to environmental in terms of forest conservation, but we did receive the Eastport Loft, not the Eastport Loft, the Eastport Shopping Center's amended plan on Friday, so that was received by the department. Everything else, I mean,
Parole
it's
Place?
minor. Parole Place is still under review.
But it got its FSD approval?
It got, I'm sorry, that forced stand delineation got approval.
And
I
is
thought
that
was
still
already
a?
approved.
I'm sorry?
I thought that was already approved.
I thought it was too.
FSD.
I don't know why it's highlighted in red. I think that's, I saw that and I was like, that's been approved. So I don't know why it's highlighted in red. I'll have to,
The Forest Conservation Plan approved?
no. The forced stand delineation is
Okay.
approved with parole place. No, the whole plan is still going under site design review and we're just getting out the comments, hopefully this week on
Okay.
parole place to the developer. There's a series of comments. So there'll be a revised plan coming in on that. 'Cause
Okay.
The West Street Library, is that a geothermal? Oh, it is? Oh,
It will
okay.
be.
What's the status of, I guess,
They're still going through, trying to get their grading permit
Oh,
punched
okay.
out. The demo permit's pretty much been approved. I usually don't like to have the demo go out before the grading permit, but I said we'll condition the demo permit on getting their grading permit to get them, so they can get started. So I don't know if they're out there yet or not, but they wanted to get started on demoing, taking things apart, so they have started demoing parts, like the mechanicals. The biggest issue was getting BG&E out there to cut the lines off, shut the lines out, the gas lines and the electrical, so. And they needed that permit in hand in order to start that action, and it takes BG&E a while, so that's why I was allowing that to go out first.
I know this is
so.
silly. Who makes the call to BG&E? Who
They
coord-
do.
They do?
They
yeah.
would, but they're gonna
Yeah.
look for the city's permits before they schedule that work to be done, so.
I did have some what was my well, Chesapeake Grove, any update on that?
Chesapeake
Still-
Grove, working through the architecturals at this point.
Okay.
Um,
No date for planning commission?
we're, maybe in September we'll do a work session,
Okay.
is the latest and greatest. They originally weren't willing to do a work session, but we're stressing a work session.
Okay. And I noticed Griscom Square was separated into 2 phases, I think you
Yeah,
said?
one was just like the single-family house out front, and the rest was the second phase, which was, the series of the units. And the issue right now, it hasn't moved forward, is because the product that he had designed isn't conducive to the market. They were larger homes, I believe. And he's looking at a redesign of some of the units, making them smaller.
Okay. That's not gonna change his plat,
That's not gonna change,
just the type of units?
just the size of the unit. right?
Okay. And presumably not gonna change the forest conservation
No.
approval? Okay. What else was there?
I have one other item I just remembered. I think I brought this up at the last environmental committee meeting. We did receive a $15,000 grant from the Chesapeake Bay Trust for green infrastructure on City Dock to do conceptual plans. And we don't want to do anything that's going to conflict with what the mayor's plan is for City Dock,
Whatever that is.
which we don't know, but we have, but the problem is for us is we have to start developing the plans. We have to engage a contractor, and we have to start holding public meetings, I think by late August, and to get public input on it. So, we do need to coordinate with the mayor's office.
This is a plan for what?
This is a grant through the Chesapeake Bay Trust for $15,000 for green infrastructure
Green
in
infrastructure,
City
okay.
Dock area. And they're for conceptual plans. So we need to start with them or we lose the funding.
What kind of green infrastructure, for example?
It could be almost anything. It
Oh,
could be Silva cells on Main Street, and that's one thing, that got delayed for a year, so we could incorporate it into that.
Yes.
It could be stormwater type of conveyances or mitigation. It's just green infrastructure. It's very
Yep.
broad, but it seems like a good opportunity to build it into whatever the final plan is for City Dock, the mayor's plan.
Oh, I wouldn't hold your breath on that
No.
I
one.
know,
I-
but we have to start moving with our
Yeah.
plans.
We have tree wells, ready, willing, and able on Main Street.
Could do potted trees.
Platted trees.
Well, well, and maybe we could use this money to do part of the vision that the mayor has identified
Mhm.
for the city dock, separate from the hotel and the structure.
Right. No, I want to keep it
the-
separate from that.
The open space ideas, maybe we could, because I think, well, part of, I think a number of us have brought up is that we can meet a large part of the mayor's vision without having to put in the hotel. And so I think this could possibly go down that.
Or change the MX zone.
Or, yeah, exactly, yeah. Well, thank you for that.
Just want to bring that to
Let's
your
not go down
attention.
that rabbit hole.
So did we finish with Pete?
I did have another question for you, Pete, but I can't, let me just take a look at this list. Oh, well, I think that's all, I'll just, oh, Parkside Preserve, have they broken ground yet or done anything out there yet? That you're
Nope,
aware of?
just had a meeting with them earlier this week about getting all the documents squared away.
Okay.
But that's, should be really soon. They'll start moving dirt, and sure we'll get lots of phone calls.
So they still see the market as good for them?
For their product,
Yeah.
yeah, they have a builder,
Okay.
lined up on contract.
And Thomas Woods, do you know why that's
Same thing.
on hold? Market issues?
He, you know, it's a tough
That's all it's
site.
for sale now, the lot's for sale. What's the
Yeah.
forest next to True Value?
I know he was trying to combine it with another property, an
Okay.
adjacent property, where they wanted
Okay.
the stormwater management to go into. But at the same time, yeah, that's a tough site. It's got a right in, right out.
Yeah, it is tough.
And I just think the builders are looking at that saying he's having a hard time getting a
Yeah.
builder in there,
Okay.
so.
All right, well, thank you.
Sure.
Dr. Gottlieb. Let's see, what else is on the agenda?
We have the trash,
Oh,
commercial
yeah.
trash fees.
And so we have, are you from Public Works? Okay, excellent. Yeah, why don't you come on up and we'll, we do
then.
have 2 other items to deal with after. Well, you can go first, but we have to talk about the phone ban and, look, there's something, my mind's, we'll just, okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, thank you, Pete, yeah. I feel like there's another piece of legislation we have to talk about.
Hey,
I'm not David Jarrell.
no.
I didn't even look like that. But my name's Jim Pittman. I'm a solid waste consultant. And I work for the city's Department of Public Works and report directly to David. I know a little bit about solid waste.
Oh, Mike, green light, you need to put the green light on.
Oh, I thought it was on, sorry. Thank you. So you can, if you want to ask me questions.
Yeah, probably not germane to your expertise, but I have several constituents, and I myself actually received a form to fill out talking about what the small business does to have commercial recycling. And when I called, I was told that that really wasn't intended. My next door neighbor has a small business and she's very active, but none of it transpires on her property. It's just the business is addressed there. I have another constituent who has the same circumstance. She's a consultant. She actually has a consulting job. I forget where she told me, but her business address is at her house, but there's no recycling. So I think there's been a lot of concern that somehow people are going to be starting to get slapped with a $50 a month fee for recycling. And so I was trying to get some clarification from Public Works about who should be filling this out, what should they be worrying about or not worrying about, hopefully. So that was the whole genesis.
Okay, well, I think I can contribute towards to all those questions. I work closely with Public Works staff. The genesis of this, first of all, there's two operative sections of the city code, 1016-220, which requires all commercial businesses and establishments to contract for refuse collection with a city licensed hauler. The other operative section of the code is 1016-225 that says that any firm engaged in the collection of refuse or recycling must be licensed with the city. And the city has a full-blown program for inspecting haulers and licensing them. And I think to date, there's probably 10 companies out there. A couple of years ago, there was some concern by some of the businesses that they were not being serviced adequately. Specifically Dunkin' Donuts on West Street, their trash was piling up in their alley. There was a situation at, I think, the 2016 boat show where waste wasn't being picked up. Long story short, staff at Public Works investigated and learned that that these businesses were contracting with a firm not licensed to be in business. That particular business has been cited back in February by Public Works, and that case is pending, that municipal infraction case is pending in district court, and it's going to be concluded next month in August. So during that whole process, in conversation with the law office, it was determined that the city didn't really have much information regarding what businesses are doing to comply with that section of the code. They've been licensing haulers, waste has been being picked up, everything seemed to be going fine. So it was recommended that some sort of survey or questionnaire be put together and sent to all the businesses in the city. As far as I understand, there isn't a comprehensive / good list of businesses, but staff did obtain from planning a list. And approximately 3,100 of these letters went out in March. It didn't differentiate between small or large. The code doesn't differentiate between small or large. It just simply says all commercial establishments and businesses. And you're correct that, I've been in the office when this has occurred, that businesses, individuals were calling once they got the letter, asking a lot of questions, and I happen to hear some of the responses given over the phone. And most of the time what I heard was they just want the business owner to fill out the questionnaire as best as they can. We actually included in the questionnaire the various sections of the code so they could see what we were looking for. And if they didn't know, or they didn't know how to fill it out, just fill it out to the best of their ability. There is no $50 fee or charge that's pending on this. This is a fact-gathering, data-gathering exercise. Of the 3,100 questionnaires that went out, only about 450 have been received so far. So it's a pretty small percentage. The cover letter asked for 30 days. We're long past the 30 days. There hasn't been any discussion about what we're going to do with that. The questionnaires are still coming in. They're all being entered into the city's iWorks system. There will be an evaluation at some point. I've seen some of the responses. Some are very good. Some of them are scant. Some of them indicated that they have a contract with a hauler, but they didn't identify who the hauler is. And it's everything in between. So it's, as Mr. Jarrell indicated when I spoke to him, because he couldn't be here today and he wanted me to kind of convey all this, is that we're just gathering all the information and we're going to figure out what it all means when it all comes in.
So it seems to me that the cover letter, first of all, I called and then called back the people that have called me from my ward and said, just fill out section A, which is your address. We need to differentiate between businesses that are actually doing business at the address versus registering that address as their business address. So my S10 corporation was registered at my address, my consulting business. I never did business at my address. I always did it wherever I was doing the consulting. My next door neighbor, her business is traveling all over the country. She obviously will sit at her desk, but she doesn't need, she just puts her recycling in her regular city recycling. And the same thing with my constituent that lives up off of Miami. So it would seem to me, I support the information gathering, but it seems to me like the letter could have been clearer, saying that, certify that you are a business at this address. If you're not actually conducting business at this address, nobody's coming to see you, you're not generating whatever manufactured waste or whatever, you don't have to go any further. And we probably would have gotten a better response. I know a lot of people just, as most people do to surveys, circular file 13. But I think part of it wasn't clear what it was about, and also it did have that intimidation of doing something that would generate a $50 a month fee for contract recycling. But
Yeah. I was involved in it, and that's how I met you in some of those initial meetings where I think the genesis were some bad apples basically downtown, with their trash bins out on parade routes and everything like that. But inevitably what happened was, with this mass distribution and data collection, we sort of lost sight of what the objective was. And I believe the objective still is to find out who these businesses are using for haulers and list them. But are we going to then add to our acceptable list of haulers, or are we still stuck on the specified? I haven't called up the spec section yet, but there are a list of approved haulers.
Yes, it's 9, and a hauler can easily get approved. All they have to do is fill an application, and the city staff will inspect the trucks.
Yeah.
The genesis is that the company that was engaged in the contracting with some of the businesses doesn't even own any trucks.
Oh, and that's illegal. I mean,
And
he was
that's
a broker.
strictly prohibited
Yeah.
in the code.
Yeah.
They were brokering.
Yeah.
And that was that's the basis of the municipal infraction.
Yeah.
There's like 9 or 10 hauling companies that are doing all the right things. So the questionnaire, besides finding out, developing a database that doesn't exist, is finding out, like you said, who are you contracting with?
Mm-hmm.
And if they've been misled, which is what I personally think that many of them have has occurred, based on the conversations that I've heard, then they need to know that they're contracting with a company that's not licensed to do that kind of business.
I think it's unfortunate that we didn't get a better list of what I think of as like the central business district. Do you know what I mean? This went out, and I had to explain to my constituents, as I'm sure Rob Ross did, is just because I talked to David Jarrell, just say not applicable and mail it back in, not applicable, I mean, or whatever.
Right.
Just
And
scare
I've
the
seen
lo-
some of those responses.
Yeah.
This business no longer exists. I no longer live here. I'm out of state. And that's valid. That'll be, staff will take that information and say, okay, we're not gonna recognize that business. There's nothing more to do with this.
Yeah, maybe that will clean up some list where, yeah, it was,
But I noticed that the code says that the city shall not provide this kind of collection, and I guess my question is, why not? Wouldn't that simplify the whole world if the city was the one doing the commercial trash collection, just like we do the residential trash
I
collection?
can.
well, yeah, that was.
I mean, it may not. I mean, I think back in, I guess this was 2013 that the decision was made to do that. There was an intent that the city got out of this business and let the private business community negotiate their own tailored collection frequency. Some people need collection 4 days a week. Some people need a certain kind of frequency of times of day. I'm guessing that it's such a variable type of
I think
service.
I missed
I don't
it.
know if the city could really do it.
Right. No, so I know what happened in 2013. We
Okay.
got out of the business of the city staff themselves doing trash collection. And we contracted out the business. I think we've also recontracted it. Bates has it, Bates. But I
For
think what
residential.
for residential. I think we could do the same thing for commercial, where the city staff doesn't collect it, but the city can contract with commercial haulers to do it. Then we really do have control over who the contractors are, and all of the special arrangements like restaurants that really need it picked up daily or need the grease collection at certain times and so forth. And I did speak to David about this, and he said, yeah, we could do this. It's just, that's not, I think
Well, the code provides for that. So 1016-220F
right?
provides a mechanism, provides the authorization that the city could establish a franchise system that you're speaking about.
Right, and it could be more than one vendor. So we're not, I mean, I agree that the public sector shouldn't be competing with the private sector, wherever we can avoid that. And so, but I do think in order to get control, I think the city can franchise the various commercial carriers, and it could be the very ones that are legal now, so we don't have to disrupt the relationship with the particular commercial enterprise, but we would have some control who they're contracting with and how good a job. You mentioned trash piling up the very day we were having a parade, and it was hideous. It was really hideous, and I think the city could have more power to say to that particular carrier, you've got to be here when you're supposed to be here. We can't have trash sitting out all day in the middle of a parade. In the summertime, we can't have trash that's generating odors right next to residential buildings or other businesses.
And the only issue is whether or not there's sufficient staffing within Public Works to take on that extra load, but that's.
Well, I bet Jay could handle that just as easily as he's handling managing the residential contract. And he certainly comes with the experience built in.
Yeah. We discussed that at this meeting that Hollis Minor called in the wake of this elevated trash problem, and the assistant director of DPW was there. I forget her name.
Marsha Patrick.
Marsha,
Patrick.
yeah. And I got the sense that, because the private company's bid contract was soon to be expired, and they were gonna, it was out for rebid, and so I suggested, well, could we add it in as an ad alternate? You know, the commercial, adding the businesses to the residential pickup, and I definitely got the sense from Marsha that it was a big task. That's where we're at with that. Yeah.
I mean, I understand, and certainly if my good colleague from Ward 4 were here, she would say we keep putting more work on people's plates, but I think the benefits gained by
Well, it's
having more
privatization.
city control in the form of franchising. The Bates contract was a 7-year contract. I can't believe we couldn't do 7-year franchises. I mean, so how much level of effort are we offering? But the control that we would generate, because we could then, if they don't pick up the trash and it's in the middle of a parade, we can say, you know, you could lose your franchise if you don't get out on time and get rid of these unsightly or odorific messes. So I guess I would encourage us to think about looking at 1016 220 and maybe getting rid of Section A and making Section F the rule of the day. We'd obviously want to consult with David and the city manager about what they think about that, but
Well, one, there are some variables. I know, for example, I mean, it's Ward One stuff, but Harry Brown's and Galway Bay, like, they have they're adamant about having their own recycling program, and so they would have the option of
Well,
not
we can
participating,
franchise
correct?
who they're using,
Yeah,
because I know they're
Okay.
green.
yeah, they're very green.
Right, so
Green,
why
good
would we
green.
not want to franchise green, and I don't think there would be
They're
any
good model.
fees involved,
I guess one consideration that I would discuss with Public Works is how do you treat a business that feels they can get a better deal by going out on their own? I mean,
Well, actually-
obviously, we'd be competitive sending out our bid, but they might be able to get something
well,
cheaper.
fine, uh, get something cheaper, get them to apply to be a franchisee. We don't need to charge a fee, just register. Basically, it would accomplish what I think this effort was all about. Let's know who's doing this. Well, if you want to collect in the city, you need to register as a franchise to do this. And Galway Bay and all the others can do whatever they.
Well, that's where we are right now. And really, I shouldn't say the only, but the main problem is you had a firm that wasn't responsible to ensure that the business
Well,
got proper service. And I think the boat show
Can I call you
incident,
right back?
if
I'm
I
in the middle
recall
of a
correctly,
committee meeting. I do want
this,
to-
this
Yeah.
illegal firm had a dispute with the arrangement that he had
Just drop the ball, yeah.
with the collector.
Yeah.
So the collector said, well, then I'm not collecting.
Mm,
And that's what happened.
yeah.
And that's why you shouldn't allow brokering in the city. It's gotta be a direct, as this code prescribes, the contract has to be directly between the collector and the business. And then there's somebody you can call. And that's the system that's in place now, but I understand what you're saying.
You've answered my question, though. My constituents were worried, and I'm glad people take getting that information from the city seriously. I'm not happy that they were worried, but anyway, thank you for coming, and
I hope
thank
it was
you for
helpful.
providing, yeah, no, it was.
It is an environmental issue.
Yeah.
Certainly. Well, thank you very much.
Okay.
All right, the last thing on the agenda is we need to talk about the phone ban. And so just to summarize where we are right now, at our last meeting, we recommended favorably, but we also recommended moving forward with the amendment from the law office, which essentially just adopted the county.
Right, whatever they do, we'll do.
But now that the
right?
county, well, their bill passed, but it was vetoed, and so
Right.
it was
Yeah,
ultimately
at the time it
defeated.
had passed.
So now that opens up, what do we do now? So to give you an update on that, I attended last night's Housing and Human Welfare Committee meeting, and, oh, and
Yeah, that was me.
Alderman Tierney's on there as well. So I attended that meeting because they were talking about and they were also having representatives from the county's health department. And so I guess so this is just an update for Alderman Arnett. But, so I asked the health department, if we were to pass this, would they be willing to enforce it? And they said yes.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, and they said they actually
wow.
currently already have.
Within city limits.
Within city limits.
Wow.
So but they said they already enforce separate rules for
cool.
the city for certain things, or they have in the past. So it's nothing unusual. They said they would be happy to do it. The only thing they can't do is actual enforcement. So
Oh.
they will recommend to the city to say, they'll do the inspections and they'll say, oh, well, this restaurant or store, whatever, is in violation. And then that'll have to go to either our code enforcement or to OEP, environmental policy, and one of them will be issuing the citation, associated citation. So, in light of that, I would like to, I would entertain a motion to reconsider our recommendation for the law office amendment, because we can't just cite the county since they don't have a law. We're going to have to
Right.
adopt our own.
Right, it's void, yeah.
And then we will entertain a motion to withdraw our recommendation on the ordinance, because I think we're going to have to revisit the ordinance itself to adjust the language to deal with the citations, the fines, but also this kind of gives us an opportunity as well, and since we don't have to ride the county's coattails, we can actually have our own standard. So I thought we may want to have a conversation in the future about if we do want to follow the model of Montgomery County and Howard County, and I think Baltimore City, but at least I know Montgomery County, where they have set the minimum. They said they can't use foam, and they actually had a requirement where they have to use compostable materials. So that might be an opportunity. We could also even talk about whether or not we want to include anything about straws.
So what is the status of the ordinance now? Was it withdrawn, or is
Well,
it?
the committee last night postponed it. Right now, it's in limbo. It's in committee essentially still. So I think,
We have to refer to the law office to change the
Right,
wording.
so we need to,
Well, we'll have
we
to
actually
work
have to
with
put
them
it
on
on
that.
our agenda, because we don't have it, so, but I like the idea, I like the idea of strengthening it. I'm very pleased that the county, I mean, I know they can't enforce it, but they would
yeah,
recommend it to our enforcement, you know, so that
Mhm.
something, and
So, what about, thank you, Mr. Chair. What about adding
Alderwoman
straws?
Cheney.
Does that create a mess if we try to add straws?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's why I'd kind of like to
Or is-
bring this back to committee to have more of a
Yeah.
discussion about it, because
Mhm.
it may make more sense to just do that separately. Maybe we should pull it into this. I'd want to kind of, I think, invite people back to talk about that.
Yeah.
And if we do that, we might need to.
Yeah.
so
Send
let's
it
just
back for-
reschedule the legislation for our next meeting.
Okay.
That's what I
Do
would
we need to
Motion?
withdraw our previous recommendation or
I
reconsider?
don't think so, because
It's not on
I
the
don't think we can
agenda.
just continue.
Sorry?
If you're just gonna add it back to the agenda, you can do that.
Deal with it then? It's not going to go to council?
Particularly since
for
the-
that?
It's not going, on Monday because housing postponed,
Okay.
so it won't be taken up until after it's been reviewed. So if you wanna add it to the next meeting. you
Okay.
can do so.
Yeah, let's get it added to the next agenda then in September.
I think that's what we said
Yeah.
last night.
And that'll give us time to talk with some of the other co-sponsors and look at what the other jurisdictions have done, see what our options are anyway.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No?
No? What about Blackwell Hedge?
For the good of the order?
No, I.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody.
I move we
Aye.
adjourn?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.